everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Black-Liberation.Tech podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Renée Jordan, and today we are going to take a look at some of the notes that I took for a panel discussion that I was a part of for the ElevateHer Summit that was hosted by Spelman College. And the title of the panel was AI, Algorithms, and Access. And so there were a few parts that I want to talk about with you, just in case you weren't there. All right, so the first part talked about equity and representation in the age of AI. Now, it's important to know that when AI platforms are developed, or if you are developing AI platforms, whatever data information you use in order to create the large language model will determine the types of responses that people receive. So if you're using a large language model that encompasses all of the internet, like ChatGPT or Gemini, then it's going to have bias as well as assumptions built in based on what's available on the internet or whoever the creators are behind the large language models. So, one of the things that I appreciated from someone doing work at Howard University, Dr. Gloria Washington, is that she actually collected data on African American English. She collected data from people talking who identified as African Americans in order to enhance voice recognition. And in order to do so, people had to answer questions and they spoke their responses, and she collected that information. And as a result, people are able to tap into her work in order to get access to that database in order to enhance their voice recognition models when it comes to AI. Now, I mentioned in the panel that I am not someone who builds large language models. And so instead of collecting data from everywhere, what I tend to do is to craft prompts that help account for the framework or the perspective or the philosophies that I want the large language model to consider when it provides me with a response. I'll put it to you like this. A light bulb went off for me. I was attending the National Black Data Processing Association's annual conference. Someone explained that they pulled data from the Department of Labor. This was before this year. And they took that data and they laid it on top of the large language model or generative AI tool that they were using. And as a result, the generative AI tool would get the information it needed from the data from the Labor Department in order to provide responses that were more tailored and crafted and specific. So I took that as a nudge to always create very large prompts when using generative AI. Now, if you look at any of the Black-Liberation.Tech lessons, you'll see that I built out large prompts so that the responses are specific. I will also include philosophies. I will also include data points from disaggregated data points or de-identified data points from data that I have collected for this open educational resource, Black-Liberation.Tech, in order to guide the generative AI tool in the type of response that I want to get back once I enter in my prompt or my instructions. And so another tool that I use is Notebook LM. And with Notebook LM, that is a Google product, I am able to say what resources I want the tool to use in order to give me a response. So it will go through the resources, whether they are YouTube videos, PDFs, or Google files, and even websites, and it will give me a response based on what is there. Now, I did see someone on TikTok using Notebook LM to study. So the person had YouTube videos from class, so like the lectures as resources, they had PDFs, they had notes that they took, and as a result, they were able to ask Notebook LM to quiz them and to give them a study guide. And that made me say to myself, you know what? I have a good amount of content. I should be able to use Notebook LM to help me make succinct responses when I'm asked certain questions. And so I actually use Notebook LM to help me prep for the panel. When you participate in a panel, hopefully they give you the questions up front so that you can prepare on how you plan to answer them. Not that you will go word for word, but you'll have an idea of how you want to respond and consider all of the other questions that are to follow so that you'll know where you want to emphasize different points. So, with equity and representation in the age of I felt that it was important for people who are building large language models, those who are building AI platforms, to definitely consider those things such as bias when building them and try to counteract them with data from diverse places, diverse people, diverse perspectives, and even ways of thinking or doing. And that way, you can not necessarily cure or guarantee that there's not any bias, but you can try and counteract or try to account for more perspectives than what the default would be without that extra push from the data that you collect or the long prompt that you provide in order to help guide the tool. Now, to be even more specific, here are a few notes that I wrote down that I want to share with you as it relates to equity and representation in the age of AI. Creating through technology. When Black women are empowered to create through prompt engineering, digital publishing, and hands-on projects, they shape the future of AI. Technology must reflect diverse perspectives and serve all communities. Now, here is a question that I have for you. If you controlled the prompts, data, and approval gates, where could a Black woman authored AI change a decision at your institution or organization within 90 days? And what single lever would you pull first? Feel free to leave your response in the comments. Now, the next topic was STEM education and student success. When it comes to STEM education and student success, I want to always emphasize to use AI as a personal tutor and not a shortcut. AI is best used for a personal tutor that reduces cognitive load. So the amount of things that you're trying to consider all at once when doing something. So helping you to manage the thought process of managing a task or a project. AI is best used as a personal tutor that reduces cognitive load, not as a shortcut. Faculty can redesign assignments to emphasize process over product, requiring students to document their prompts, evaluate AI output, and refine their work. So if you are a faculty member or a teacher, if you ask the students, hey, I want you to do this assignment. Yes, you can use AI, but the stipulation with using AI is that you have to show the prompts that you provided the AI tool and you had to provide the output. So, what did the AI platform have to say in response to your prompt? And then you need to evaluate. So, how good of an answer or how good of a response did the AI tool give you? What do you think might be missing? Where do you see bias in the response? What issues do you see with the output of the AI platform? After you got the AI output, did you verify it? Did you look it up? Did it hallucinate or did it provide you with accurate information? What rating would you give this response in comparison to an answer that you would come up with? Or if you were grading this assignment, what would you give the AI output? And then the last part talks about using AI to refine your work. So that means it's a finishing touch. It means it is a way of perhaps narrowing your focus. Perhaps it's going to assist you in creating a succinct response. Perhaps it's going to assist you in looking for the holes in your argument. Let's say you completed a persuasive argument paper or you are writing out your conclusion. You can ask AI, hey, How would you evaluate this response? Where are the holes in my logic? Where are some places in my response that need attention, that I need to go back to, that I need to reconsider? How would you rate my response? So you can use AI as a tool to refine your work as opposed to just giving you the answer. This cultivates critical thinking, authorship, and creativity. For first generation students and Black women in STEM, generative AI can break down complex ideas into digestible, culturally relevant explanations, reveal new career pathways, and build confidence through hands on creation. Embracing AI with transparency and intentionality ensures academic integrity while transforming it into a powerful tool for equity, empowerment, and student success in STEM. Now, with that being said, here's a question for faculty and teachers. Keeping yourself as the grader in chief, which assignment could you convert into an AI assisted process journal? That means the students will provide you with their prompts, their outputs, and their revisions made while working with AI to reveal deeper learning than a final answer ever shows. All right, now the next section or the next topic was research, discovery, and innovation. Here are a few things to consider. Culturally responsive research. AI acts as a research assistant supporting literature reviews, idea generation, and demystifying complex concepts while honoring diverse ways of knowing. Now, I'm not going to sit here and do a marketing speech or promotional of any specific AI platform. I mentioned ChatGPT and Gemini because I use those two the most, as well as Notebook LM. However, there are AI platforms that specialize in digging into the literature. You can use prompts that are elaborate and extensive in order to help enrich your search process. For example, once again, this is not a promotion, it's just an example. I wanted to find specific types of literature, and in order to do so, I described the literature that I was looking for. So I said, I'm looking for peer-reviewed articles that have information on Latinas, Afro-Latinas, and Black women, digital literacies, and technology skills specifically. I further clarified by stating that the articles should not compare girls to boys. They needed to be specific to Latinas, Afro-Latinas, Black women, and girls. And as a result, I was able to get output that was specific to that. Now, in order to do so on my own, before the AI platform was available, I actually dug into our library database system, which included EBSCOhost and all those other tools, and read either the abstract or at least the first few pages to find out if the literature was comparing these groups of girls and women to boys and men. I wanted to review literature that had them disaggregated so that I would be able to see what was going on with these specific groups and not in a competition, if you will, to others. So when you need help with the literature review, I recommend checking out the different platforms that are available. Be specific in your prompts in terms of what you want to see as potential sources of literature to review. I want you to ask AI platforms questions that will help you transition from one similar group of thoughts to the next. Also, what are some questions that I can ask myself while I'm reviewing the literature to help me along the way? For example, if I say that I am reading these 10 articles, what are some questions that will help me think about the connections between research, the differences, the stories that are being told, the holes in the scholarship, so what's not being covered, as well as different perspectives. What's another way that has not been considered when we're talking about X, Y, and Z? So use it as a research assistant to help you along the way, not just to give you answers, but to help you refine your searches as well as ask you clarifying questions about your literature review. You can even ask it, hey, what's missing here? Where are the holes in my logic? This is what I'm thinking. Now, I want to caution you that you should most likely provide bullet points or short phrases. I don't necessarily recommend putting in your whole paper because what can happen is that your whole paper can become somebody else's point of reference if they're using that same platform. So keep this in mind. If you don't want to email it to a stranger, or if it's something that you indeed want to mark as your own and not something that can be borrowed by someone else, keep it to yourself. Don't put it in the AI platform, but you can put bullet points in there, not your whole paper. Are you catching what I'm trying to say? I hope so. But in other words, try talking it out as opposed to uploading entire papers to the platform. So let's take a look at some other things to consider. Critical AI literacy. Responsible use requires verify, then trust approach with conscious prompt engineering to counter bias and transparency in documenting AI contributions. Now, this is something that I want to bring up as it relates to the Black-Liberation.Tech website. So just give me a moment while I hop on over there. All right. So if you take a look at the lessons on the Black-Liberation.Tech website, one of the things that I do, I use the blog feature so that you can see when I posted the lesson, so you'll have a point of reference. But the other thing that I do in the author section, I leave a note in both English and on the Spanish site, it's in Spanish. And it says, this blog post was created through a collaborative effort, incorporating valuable insights from contributors, prompt engineering and editing by Dr. Jordan, and the assistance of ChatGPT and Gemini for generating and refining content. So that's an example of how I give credit to where credit is due. The contributors in this case were those who participated in my dissertation and checked off the box on the consent form stating that I could use their data to help develop an open educational resource. And so that's what I do with the lessons specifically. So the things that get covered, the main points, the big ideas, even the different sections, those parts of the design process, I used information from the contributors of my dissertation in order to arrive. Now, prompt engineering and editing, I tell people this. I am so good at creating prompts that I create prompts that generate prompts for other people to use as prompts to help them wherever they are. And so if you take a look at the Black-Liberation.Tech lessons, you will see that there are generative AI prompts that you can use in whatever platform you decide to help you think about how you can incorporate your interests, how you can create projects, how you can engage AI in different ways in order to get tailored output to help you along your way based on what's important to you. I leave the things in brackets so that you can insert your interests, your ideas, your thoughts, your concerns, your perspective so that you don't get a generic response. You get something that's based on what you are interested in as an individual. And then before the prompts, there are reflect and write questions that will help you think through or consider the different information that you know about yourself. And when you write that information down, you can include that as context for your prompt. So you take your write and reflect responses, you paste it into the generative AI tool of your choice, whether that's ChatGPT, Gemini, or somewhere else. And underneath it, you say, use the information above as context. And then from that point, you give it the instructions, you give it your prompt. And so then you go to where you filled out the prompt in the lesson and you copy and you paste that into the generative AI tool and then hit submit. That way, the output that you receive is tailored to you. It is specific to you. I show examples of me submitting my own prompts in my own context so that you can see how my responses will come out different. Now, even if somebody were to take my exact responses and copy and paste them into their generative AI tool, there's still no guarantee that it will come out the same because it depends on what day you're asking it. And it also depends on your prior search histories or your prior conversations with your generative AI tool. So what else have you talked about with ChatGPT, with Gemini, or any of those platforms that will be used as context for your output? So think about the types of conversations that you're having with your generative AI tool of choice, when you open up a new conversation, it's like starting a new conversation. But if you continue to work within the same conversation, then the information in there is fair game. And sometimes it will still pull information from other conversations that you've had in the past. I've seen that myself. So, once again, critical AI literacy, verify, then trust. When you get an output, when you receive a response, go to a trusted website. Go to a .edu, go to a .org, find a .gov that's reliable and see what you find there. Go to a library, look it up, see what an expert in the field has to say about the output that you received. So verify the information that you received from generative AI with another source before you decide to trust it. And keep in mind, just because it gives you a response doesn't mean you have to do anything with it. You can save it in a folder for another time, or you can just move on. You don't have to do what it says. You are in control. So once again, responsible use requires verify then trust approach with conscious prompt engineering to counter bias and transparency in documenting AI contributions. So you want to make sure that you are being specific, that you're including different perspectives. If you are working from a Black feminist framework, then enter that information in and say, use the above information as context and then go into your prompt. That will help counter bias and make sure you're being transparent. So if you're using AI, talk about how you're using it. It might help somebody else think about how to use it themselves. It's a good idea to save your prompts and save the output in a folder so that you can have your own track record of how you engage with AI and the types of prompts that you're using, the types of questions, the types of instructions that you're giving to AI to help you along your way. One way of thinking about how to frame your prompt is to make sure that you include who, what, when, where, how, why, and tone, as well as the format. How do you want the output to come back to you? Do you want it as text? Do you want it as a table? Do you want it as a specific file format? Because it is possible to export files from the generative AI tool to help you along your way. And then if you want, you can share that information with your learning group. So let's say you're exploring AI together with some other people. You can share it with them so that they can see how you progress through your prompt engineering. And perhaps over time, you'll see how you are able to refine and enhance the prompts that you provide in the platform. Now, here's another note to consider when we're talking about community-centered approaches. A lot of people like to see visuals of what you're talking about. Think about how you can use AI platforms for data visualization and data interpretation. How can you get help creating infographics? How can you get help creating flowcharts? Now, that's one of the things that is in high demand. People want to be able to see the data, not just a list of numbers and not just a lot of text. How can you share out your findings in a way that people will remember visually through visual storytelling? Now, I've shared before that Napkin AI is one of the tools that I choose to use when it comes to visualizing text and creating different types of images to help get my point or idea across in a way that people will remember. Now, here's a question for you. Assuming AI only does the heavy lifting you permit, what new community-rooted research question would you finally pursue? And what two verify, then trust checks would you require before using AI output? Now, another topic of interest relates to workforce development and career access. When we're talking about AI, think about adaptability and curiosity. These are essential skills for navigating AI transformed careers. You need to be flexible. You have to be able to try things out. Don't be afraid to play around with it. See what works, see what doesn't work. Think about what is okay to use it for, and what's not okay to use it for. For example, personal identifiable information. Do not enter that information into any AI platform. Now, if your organization adopts a tool and it uses personal identifiable information, make sure or ask questions about how that platform keeps the data safe of those who are your constituents. Also ask, how does the tool keep the data safe that you enter? How does it keep your data safe? Here are some other things to consider. Student leadership, empowering students to shape technology, not just adapt. So I want to challenge you. Don't just use the AI as a shortcut to get to answers, but how can you engage with it in a way so that you are the expert and you are framing how that engagement goes along? What information are you providing to it to help set the tone for your conversation? Are you the one building the AI platform and you're the one that's providing it with the data to consider? Are you the one constructing rich prompts so that it's not giving you generic responses? Are you thinking about how it can help you along your thought processes, how it can help you brainstorm, how it can help you bring things that seem not to be similar together so that you can dive deeper into something that's worth exploring? That's definitely where your curiosity needs to come in. Something else to consider, once again, AI literacy, prompt engineering, and critical AI skills for all students. So AI is here, students are using them, and we want to make sure that those who are in traditionally underserved communities, traditionally under-resourced communities, we want to make sure that they have access to these tools as well, understand them and understand how people use them. And even if someone decides that they don't want to use AI, they need to know how others are using AI so that they are knowledgeable about what's happening today. AI is being used in many places. One of the panelists was able to provide several examples of how AI is being used by health insurance as well as mortgage lending. So think about it. If you ever have to go receive health care, if you ever pay a mortgage or are interested in getting a mortgage for a home or a loan for anything else, think about it. You need to know that these tools are being used by others. Perhaps you need to ask them about how your data is being protected. Perhaps you need to ask them what else you can provide in order to get an outcome that's more favorable based upon you and not just a predictive analytic. All right, so here's a question for faculty and teachers. If every student had an AI co-pilot you, as the instructor, could throttle, what one interdisciplinary portfolio-worthy project would you greenlight next term? And which industry mentor would you invite to co-guide it? So think about it. If you could control how much the student is actually using the AI tool to help them in a project that's huge, what project would you assign to them? And who would be an expert that you would invite to help guide the project along the way, the different steps? Think about it and leave your comments in the comment section. So let's take a look at cultural intelligence. Ethical AI requires more than technical fixes. It demands cultural intelligence, human oversight, and diverse collaboration to prevent harm to marginalized communities. Now, I'll give an example, and hopefully you'll see where I'm going with this. There was a advertisement for blue jeans that didn't go over well with diverse populations. And then that advertisement was followed up by a few advertisements where they did go over well with diverse populations and communities. Specifically, one became a trend on TikTok. And I'll leave it at that. For those of you who know which one became a trend on TikTok, that included a dance, a group of people dancing, please put it in the comments. And so Think about it like that. You need to be aware when you're working with AI platforms, the different cultural bias that can happen, as well as ethics. Just because you can do something, is it okay? Where is your moral compass? Where do you lie in terms of what's right, what's wrong, what's okay, what's too much, what's oversharing? What are acceptable uses of AI versus unacceptable uses? What are ways of using AI that will keep you safe? What are ways of using AI that are harmful? And how do you keep an eye out for those harmful ways? Some of that is going to come as a result of having conversations, talking to people, asking them about the way they're using it and sharing how you're using it and bouncing ideas off of each other and saying, you know what? Something strange happened, and share what that strange thing was to see if they experienced the same thing, or share the strange thing so that they'll know that strange stuff happens sometimes when using AI. Community co-design. AI development should be co-designed with communities, embedding culturally responsive frameworks and social policy experts from ground up. So, if you are in charge of developing AI, if you are in charge of how it is used in an organization or institution, if you as an individual want to be able to make sure that you're considering those around you, whether they are virtual community members or they are community members in your actual community, think about it. There are concerns about how much resources go into creating the physical aspects of these platforms, and those need to be thought about and discussed. I'm not going to sit here and lecture you about it. I want you to look it up. How much energy resources does it take to run AI platforms? How much water resources does it take to run AI platforms? Look that information up and learn it for yourself and consider that. This is good information to know so that you can be an informed citizen. This next topic under accountability and bias talks about beyond compliance. Ethical standards must reflect philosophies like Ubuntu and Afrocentricity, centering collective well-being rather than mere technical compliance. Now, I'm going to leave you to think about that. If the community is considered when building tools, what are some things that are good and what are some things that are bad? What are some things that are not so good? And how can you consider that whether you're involved in building or using these platforms? Now, here's an ethical checkpoint question. Before deploying any AI tool you still govern, what is the one bias audit or community sign off you would mandate that would give you moral confidence to proceed? So, in other words, what would you look for before you say, okay, this output is good to go? This AI platform is worth using. What are the key things that you would look for as it related to bias and as it related to whether or not it is good for the community? What are those things? Think about it. Now, here's the call to action. We are in need of digital liberation labs. Just think about it. Innovation hubs dedicated to culturally responsive, community-centered, hands-on creations. How can you create these labs? Think about how you can have bilingual programs, mentorship networks, as well as projects that involve hands-on creation. Here is the final question that I want to leave with you. This is an implementation challenge. With the resources you already control, what is the smallest viable digital liberation lab you could launch in 30 days? And how would you prove authorship, not just access, actually increased? So, how would you prove that more people are creating and not just accessing your digital liberation lab? Once again, thank you for listening to another episode of the Black-Liberation.Tech podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Renée Jordan. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and share, rate, and review the podcast to help it become more discoverable. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye.